I think I'm saying that we struggle all our lives to answer it. That it's the struggle that is important. That's what helps us to define our place in the universe.
This is Beverly, Dr. Beverly, Dr. Beverly Crusher.
Look where we are. Here, all of us, in this moment. So let's do what we spent our entire lives learning to be great at.
And this is Crusher Convo. And welcome to Crusher Convo. We're crushing the conversation one episode at a time. There is no bluffing in this poker game as I talk about the series finale of TNG, All Good Things. Is it the greatest finale of all time, or has time not been so great to this beloved classic? I am flying solo today, but I'm excited because I absolutely enjoy the series finale of TNG, and so I can't wait to talk about certain moments. But before I jump right in, I'm going to be talking about my sponsor. So, Cherry Tree. Use the code CrusherConvo6 to get 6% off your order of anything over at mycherrytree.com. They have a bunch of cool items, especially computer items. And of course, if you also love your Ractogino and you want a DS9 mug, please go over there and use my code. And also you can follow them on the socials at Cherry Tree Incorporated. Wanted to do that real fast. And we have Ed in the chat. Greetings. I thought you had a guest. I do not. Sorry to disappoint you, Ed. It's just me tonight. But, you know, hopefully maybe next time we'll see. We'll see what my next episode's going to be with the sick bay spinner. And he also says, I hope everyone is having a great weekend. Yes, it is. It is my Friday. It is Friday, and it is also my Friday. So very happy to start this weekend. It's been an extremely busy week. And I'm in a lot of pain, but I am hanging in there as much as I can. So enough about me. You guys are not here to hear me talk about my chronic pain and work woes. We are here to talk about TNG. So I'm going to go ahead and get it started with the first clip.
Captain. Are you all right? Captain!
Captain? Would this be your first time on a Galaxy-class starship? Are you all right, sir? Sir?
I'm sorry, Lieutenant. My mind must have wandered.
We're nearing the end of 7 years, and as many people know, the 7th season had some great hits and really big misses, okay? So when it came up to the series finale, especially knowing that they were going to be doing movie, we just didn't know what to expect. And I really shouldn't include myself because I wasn't watching it at the time, but I'm sure the fans just didn't know what to expect. So the first thing that you see is, of course, Troy and Worf, which I did not like that relationship. I just thought it was weird. But of course, clearly they're still together. And then all of a sudden something's wrong with Picard. And he was just very confused because he knew something was wrong, didn't know where he was, right? But I liked these little parts because at first it's showing he's with Geordi, he's old, he's an ambassador, okay? But he was talking to Geordi like he knew like what was going on. So it was almost like, are we seeing a glimpse of the future? Like we just didn't know what was going on. And then all of a sudden it shifts and then there's Tasha. And that was a big reveal for me. I think this really is good that they brought Tasha back just because she was a part of the original crew. We didn't really get to see her. And so to have her in this finale, especially this moment, she's the one that took him to the Enterprise D. And I thought that was a special moment. But then when he snaps back into, you know, the present and there's Troy, it affects him because he's like, I don't know what's going on. I just saw Tasha. And so you could tell that this is really affecting Picard. We also have Kimberly Ann here in the chat. And what I was saying, Mrs. Ed was like, yes, Mrs. Looking at you, Masks. Mask was not a great episode, but I will point out, I think Brent Spiner did amazing flipping back and forth between characters. That I think is the only good thing about Masks. I'm just going to say that right now. Anyways, yes, talking about all good things. Kimberly was mentioning that here in the chat as well. And Ed also says, so we know that the alternate future, we hear that Geordi has a wife named Leah. Do we think it's Leanne Bombs? I think so. I think it is. However, because, and I'm kind of glad you mentioned that because I will be talking a little bit because things did change. It did change the future, right? So I don't think Leah is in Geordi's future now of what we saw on Picard, but I think it would have been. So interesting thought that he and Leia would have, that's Star Wars. Leia would have had gotten married and had kids. Okay. But then I'm glad that they didn't because of how, I guess you could say the relationship started was not really the greatest thing. It also says, so that means Leah Brahms was in the creepy people in that timeline. I guess so. Yeah. Now that you think about it. Whoops. I think this was a good hook, right? Because now you're looking at this and you're just like, what exactly is happening to Picard? What exactly is going on? And since this is a 2-hour finale, this is more, sorry to say this, this was a better movie than Generations. I said it, and I'm going to die on that hill. And it really impacted all the characters, and it really showcased all the characters. And I think that's what was so important about it. And that's what one of the biggest things that I liked about it. Kimberly also says Gates McFadden, well, I looked kind of de-aged in the future. You know what? It's funny because Abby from First Light Podcast does mention about the makeup. So I think that was kind of funny. And yes, the Pasteur ship was a medical vessel. Yes, it was. So anyways, Ed has a shocked emoji right now. But I'm going to go ahead into my next clip, which talks about really the second part. So I guess the B plot in a sense, because this is kind of a hint of where Picard is going, and it's not that great, but it makes total sense when it comes to season 3 of Picard. So let's go ahead and talk about that.
I scanned you for evidence of Irumodic syndrome, as you suggested. There wasn't any. But I did find a small structural defect in the parietal lobe.
A defect that you hadn't noticed before?
It's the kind of defect that would only show up on a level 4 neurographic scan. It could cause you to be susceptible to several kinds of neurological disorders, including Irumodic syndrome. Now, it's possible for you to live with this defect for the rest of your life without developing a problem. Or even if you do, many people continue to live normal lives for a long time after the onset of Irumodic syndrome.
If that's so, why do you look as if you just signed my death sentence?
I'm sorry. I guess it caught me off guard.
I wouldn't worry about it. Something tells me that you're gonna have to put up with me for a long time to come.
Well, it won't be easy, but I'll manage.
You're certain?
The portions of the brain related to cognition, imagination, all affected. According to this, Jack has Irumodic syndrome.
Inherited from me.
I wanted to showcase both of these clips because it's Beverly who is basically giving the devastating news that Picard and Jack has Irumodic syndrome. The only difference is, though, is that this particular scene where we see Beverly tell Picard that he has it no longer exists. We're not actually really sure when or how she gave the diagnosis after All Good Things had ended, because he did save humanity and completely restarted Okay, so at the end of the episode, after saving humanity, and we're going to talk, of course, more about that later, he shifts back and where he met Worf and Troy in the hall, and now their future is now different. Okay, so everything we see in these 25 years later, with him being ambassador, Beverly is a captain, they married, Troy died, like all of this stuff happened, no longer exists. Even that kiss did not exist. Okay, so this is like, we don't know when they got together. We don't know what happened, but because this happened during the time of him trying to figure out these timeline changes and saving humanity, this has been erased. Now he remembers it. He remembers everything. He knows exactly what went down, clearly told them this is what happened in the future, where Beverly was like kind of concerned. But now things have changed because that future was with humanity being destroyed. Now their future has changed with humanity being saved. Ed says, when we would assume that he made a report about the alternate future and had her check anyways, but it was done off screen. That's what we have to do. Yes. But I'm curious about if her reaction was the same. Because it could have been the same thing as this, or it happened differently. I kind of wish I knew what the real one was and know how that might have impacted their relationship later on. Because as you see her talking to Picard about Jack has aromatic syndrome, it's a devastating diagnosis. Just like you kind of saw her she was trying to, be strong about it, but it was a devastating diagnosis for her to even tell Picard, that she was even trying to psych herself up of like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. You can live years with this. It's fine. She even says that to Picard about Jack. It could be years before he even develops any symptoms. So you kind of see in both aspects that Beverly is really trying to help herself when she's making this diagnosis, when she's reporting this diagnosis. But I thought it was just interesting, to have both of those and have her do it. Now, of course, in season 1, when we find out that Picard, in season 1 of Picard, when we find out that Picard's aromatic syndrome is basically killing him, it isn't Beverly telling him that. It was his old doctor that he had on the Stargazer. And he's just accepting the fact. But of course, we learn later that he never had it to begin with. And I'm kind of glad they did something different, because in the episode where they find out that Jack has aromatic syndrome, I thought it was kind of weird how they found out that he had it so young versus Picard, because Picard didn't have it yet. He just had a defect that could turn into aromatic syndrome. Jack already had it. But now we know why, because of the Borg, and Jack was born with it, and that's what we notice later on. So I do like how they did a switcheroo on us, where we thought it was one thing, and in reality it was another. But I did like this scene. It really highlighted where the relationship was going, especially because that and then the kiss and all that stuff was before we found out that they had gotten married but then divorced. I am glad they at least brought the relationship in somewhat into the B plot, because as we all know, since season 1, they've always been the will they, won't they kind of thing. But season 1 had a little bit more of that than the rest of the other seasons. So I'm glad they brought it back. I'm glad they highlighted it. I am now going to go to my third clip. If you guys have any other comments, please let me know. And yeah, I'm all in at this point. And the one thing I did want to mention about this kiss is that when she is now knowing, like he's trying to let them know, like, this is what I'm going through. I don't know what's happening. She sees that, the brain has gotten bigger because he had developed more memories in a matter of a few minutes, that something was going on. You could tell she's scared. You could tell that she is like, this is going to happen, and she just doesn't know how to stop it. But to him, he's just like, a lot could happen in 25 years, which is why she made the leap which I love, to kiss him because at the end of Attached, she's the one that walked away. So again, full circle. Glad they brought that back and mentioned it. But yes. And Kimberly says, exactly, Jesse. Thank you. On to our next clip. And this is actually probably my favorite that I'm going to mention. And I'm just really excited about it.
Q, I knew it. What's going on?
It's Judge Q to you. And isn't it obvious what's going on?
The last time that I stood here was 7 years ago.
7 years ago, how little do you mortals understand time? Must you be so linear, Jean-Luc?
But look at you. A chip off the old block.
Q. Is that right?
Simple name for a complicated being.
My father told me all about you. I thought you were dead.
Oh. And here I was hoping the next generation wouldn't think so linearly.
That is such a perfect tie-in to kind of showcase what or who Q is, okay? Because at the first he's all like, why are you mortals thinking so linearly? And then later on he's like, I really wish the next generation did think so linearly. So Q has had a hand in all of this, especially in Picard's life, since really the beginning, right? I am going to be mentioning more about that later. But I loved the parallel of where he's trying to explain to Picard, something's going to happen, you did it, and you need to fix it. And then, of course, he puts Picard on this journey of humanity, which then, when Picard's all done, right, it's now Jack's turn. And that's why I really would love to have Legacy, because I really want to see what that looks like. Q and Beverly didn't get along. We're just going to throw that out there right now. They did not get along, and I'm pretty darn sure that Beverly was not happy to know that Q visited Jack. And I think whatever Q, like he finds these particular, like the Picard family line here so special in a certain way, and he wants to see that continue with Jack. Okay. But I loved it. I loved that final little sneak peek at the end of season 3 of Picard. It just really tied in well with All Good Things. It kind of just married those two very, very well. And I give, hats off to Terry Matalas, because he is a fan. He loves TNG. He loved probably All Good Things, and he wanted to make sure to honor that. So that's why I wanted to mention. Another thing too is, as like I said, All Good Things was really showcasing all of the characters. And as Ed mentioned, Geordi was married, Data was a professor, Troy unfortunately died. I believe Worf was now part of the Klingon council. Riker was an admiral. Beverly was a captain. Like they all separated, right? They all went their different ways and all advanced their careers. Who knows what happened to Troy, but it really drove a wedge between Worf and Riker because of it. And it's so funny how it was pretty similar how it ended up, with just a few little tweaks when it came to Picard. And we got to see just then that they were just really broken, and a lot had happened. And like I said, Beverly and Picard divorced, and, Riker was really going through, just has not been the same since Troy died. And of course, when you see them in the past, it kind of reminds you of these moments of like, there's Tasha, there's Chief O'Brien, right? People that were there in the beginning who are no longer with them for different reasons. And really just was like, this is it. Everyone played a part to lead Picard into this journey. That's what I think is what Q was trying to showcase, right? And again, we'll talk more about that as we get closer to it. Again, loved the scene, loved Q, and I loved that Q was a part of this, because it bookended the series, right? From how it started with Encounter at Farpoint, with how it ends with All Good Things. And of course, he does mention, all good things must come to an end. So, next clip. Here we go, guys. And I just love this scene.
I've completed my analysis of the anomaly. It appears to be a multiphasic temporal convergence in the space-time continuum.
In English data.
It is, in essence, an eruption of anti-time.
Anti-time.
A relatively new concept in temporal mechanics. The relationship between anti-time and normal time is analogous to the relationship between antimatter and normal matter.
So if time and anti-time were to collide,
they would annihilate one another, causing a rupture in space. I believe this is what happened in the Devon system.
I'm glad they did a really quick, this is what's happening, okay? It was quick, it was easy, it was technobabble, it was Beverly being the audience, being in English data, and it actually makes sense, right? So that's why where he's hitting all of these timelines, when he's in the future as the old ambassador with aromatic syndrome, losing his mind, there is nothing. But when you go to the encounter at Farpoint, that anomaly is huge. So it's reversing itself. I'm kind of curious of what Wesley would have thought about this at this time. He was already a traveler. Did he also have a hand in it? Did he know what was going on? I don't know. But anyways, that's a whole other can of worms that I don't think I have enough time to discuss. But I loved how quickly it was to try and explain what was happening, because now there's a danger element to it. All of a sudden, for the present time, old scars are healing. Geordi's gaining his sight. Tragically, Alyssa lost the baby because it reversed back to its original form into cells. And so, but Beverly's like, this is temporary right now, but it's going to get really bad if we don't figure this out. We're just going to die, and there will be no future. There will be nothing's going to happen of what Picard was seeing. So now there's an element of risk and stakes and needing to quickly solve this issue. That's what I think I love about this finale, is that they were hitting so many points at once, and it hit every single one, and it aligned perfectly, kind of like a domino. One domino hit, and it just was a perfect flow. And you watch suspensefully of what's going to happen next, because especially for people who grew up with TNG, like my husband, they're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Maybe because you guys knew that Generations was coming. Maybe you didn't know. I don't know. But if you guys did know that Generations is coming, then maybe the stakes started to go down a little bit. And again, you don't know who was going to survive. We already saw that Troy was dead. So it's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen by the time the movie comes out? Are they all going to be there? I don't know. Ed says, to quote George Lucas, it's like poetry, which is very true. And Sean is now in the chat. Hello, Sean. The poker scene at the end always brings a tear to my eye. And thank you to Melinda Snodgrass for creating that poker scene, because she's the one that did it in Measure of a Man. And they kind of she just did it as a quick throw in, listen to my interview with her, and then they kept it this entire time. So we would not have that poker scene if it wasn't for her. Sub Commander Tall is in the chat. Thank you so much. It says, is such a great finale. It offers more scope than typical episode, and yet seems very much a part of a typical format of the show. Yes, it's not trying too hard. Absolutely, it didn't try too hard. It used the characters as the main focal point. These people know what they're doing. They've been playing these characters for 7 years. We love these characters. They were the highlight, and that's what I loved about it. And I think that's what was missing in Picard Season 1 and Season 2. Not to put down Seven or Rafi or anyone else that was also part of the cast, but there's something about these group of characters, Beverly, Troy, Riker, Data, all of them, they complete each other, right? So Picard didn't feel complete until Season 3. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. Also, Sean says, technically Geordi shouldn't get his eyesight back. He was born this way, so there was no perfect vision. Well, look at that, Sean. Just threw a curveball at me. That is very true. That is very, very true. Ed also says, I don't think they had announced Star Trek Generations to film yet. I think that was announced 5 days after the finale. Good to know. Because so then, so that in that case, you guys were sitting at the edge of your seats, I'm assuming. And then, of course, this is bear in mind in 1994, the internet was in its infancy for in-home use. So all information pretty much came from Entertainment Tonight or magazines or TV Guide, I will throw in. So yes, that is very, very true. So I'm sure you guys were like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And yeah, and this is actually a perfect segue with my next clip.
I know it is difficult for you to understand that we have to take the ship into the very center of the phenomenon and create a static warp shell. Now, this will put the ship at risk. Quite frankly, we may not survive. But I want you to believe that I am doing this for a greater purpose, and that what is at stake here is more than any of you can possibly imagine. I know you have your doubts about me, about each other, about the ship. All I can say is that although we have only been together for a short time, I know that you are the finest crew in the fleet. And I would trust each of you with my life. So, I'm asking you for a leap of faith.
This is what I'm talking about. And I love that they did it when he was starting an encounter at Farpoint, you know, so the past, the very beginning, because he knows what this crew of his is capable of. And he is asking them to take that leap of faith that he knows that they would, because he saw it. That's just how they were. And everyone played a part in his journey, because this was really about Picard's journey in this aspect, especially what Q was trying to showcase to him. You did this, you need to fix it. But everyone played a part and everyone helped in their own way. And that's what I love about that scene. Ed says TV Guide counts as a magazine. I guess, was it a little book though? It was a guide. Now it's a magazine. Is it even out anymore? I don't even know. Sean says, one more appearance of Tasha and Miles. Yep. And I love that. It was a great way to just give them one last hurrah. And hello, Sean from Letters for Legacy saying greetings, Crusher Convo. Thank you for joining in the chat tonight as we talk about the finale. And I'm also talking about Picard Season 3, and I'm also mentioning Legacy. So this is a perfect, perfect episode for you, Sean. Just so you guys know, back when on Star Trek Day, I talked to Sean. It was great. Letters for Legacy. Let's see Captain 7. Let's see the Enterprise G. I almost said D. Enterprise G. And yeah, that would be awesome. All right, last clip, guys. And my favorite, super stoked about this one. It just makes sense. I don't know. I just love it. Here we go.
Did it work?
Well, you're here, aren't you? You're talking to me, aren't you?
What about my crew?
The anomaly, my ship, my crew. I suppose you're worried about your fish, too. Well, if it puts your mind at ease, you've saved humanity once again.
Thank you.
For what?
You had a hand in helping me get out of this.
I was the one that got you into it. A directive from the continuum. The part about the helping hand, though, was my idea.
Why does all this matter? Is something going to happen for which I will be required?
Must it always have galactic import? Universal stakes, celestial upheaval? Isn't one life enough? You ask me why it matters. It matters to me. You matter to me.
I really wanted to showcase this part because this was the perfect ending to what Q was trying to say at the end of All Good Things. I liked the little similarities where he's like, does everything have to have galactic input, right? It really just had to do with Picard and how he wanted him to have a good life, right? Because at the end of the season 2, he's saying, I'm dying alone and I don't want that for you. And the one thing that we saw with All Good Things is that they had all separated. And so they were all alone in their own different way. They seem to have kept in touch here and there, but they weren't together, right? And so to show them coming together again to fight against this anomaly, they needed each other. And the one thing that I just, it's more heartbreaking, I think, because as you can see, you know, instead of like, because they changed, you know, Picard changed this history, the future changed, which is what Data had mentioned. And so instead of him being married to Beverly, they never got married, but they had a son. Okay. And instead of her becoming a captain with Starfleet, she left Starfleet. Instead of Troy dying, Data died. Riker never became an admiral. He stayed as a captain, and Picard became an admiral instead of an ambassador. Now, Geordi went on to have a wonderful life and a family, but he never had that son. He only had the 2 daughters. So different things, you know, and of course, Worf, you know, clearly was not part of the Klingon Council. He kind of did his own thing. But again, we're seeing that this change really affected them in the future. And I think that's kind of why Beverly mentioned, like, should we be worried? And Data's like, no. But in a sense, I think she kind of was, because now she doesn't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Picard told her that they got married. I don't know if he told Troy that she had died. I don't know if he told her those kind of things. But in a sense, now they're not really sure what's going to happen. Now, of course, it seems like, you know, of course, Riker and Troy got together, but then they still suffered. They lost a son. So I feel like their big galactic, you know, stakes that Q kind of mentioned was their own future, because it had devastating consequences. So I wanted to mention that and how it really changed these characters and shaped them into totally different people than what they were meant to be. Ed says, I can support the idea of Star Trek Legacy. It's something that we need. Kimberly did say, I saw that episode on the DVD, the fan collection. Sean says, thanks, Jesse, as I had mentioned about my interview with him. Sean also says, Q really can't die. He's in all time frames at once. Very, very true. And DS9 had a good ending. Voyager was okay. They got home. I mean, what other ending would Voyager have except for getting home, right? If they didn't get home, that would be really sad. We have Michael in the chat. Well, there was an episode in Voyager where one of the Q beings desperately wanted to die, and they had some kind of court case. I remember that episode. It's funny how these starships are sanctioned to become de facto courts. Yeah, it's true. There is a way for Q's to die, and maybe that's why Q thought he was. Maybe this was his own test, and that's why he was able to come back and give, maybe that Q, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the symbolic is that Q who had helped Picard and the Enterprise D, he's the one that died. That Q no longer exists. This new Q that we see is now the different version of Q that is going to be on Jack's journey. And I could definitely see them doing that. Ed does say, I definitely recommend reading Star Trek Voyager Homecoming, the current comic. Oh, I've heard wonderful things. Michael says, the character arc I would be most interested in seeing get explained would be the Ferengi post Moogie and Rom. I would love to see the efforts to transition that planet into social democracy. Very interesting. And I love that Rom became, what was it, I can't remember, the hierarchy of the Ferengi. Absolutely love that. And Sean says, so in fan headcanon is AGT, so All Good Things, or The Last Generation, the TNG finale. Because a lot of people say that season 3 of Picard is like season 8, right? I like to see them separate. Okay, so I really see All Good Things as the finale, but I think as their whole story arc, that's what season 3 is. Thank you, Ed. The Grand Nagus. That's what it is. So anyways, guys, and now I'm going to do real fast a very interesting little section from Nema. Check it out. been a hot second since I brought out Larry Nemechek's book. There's a whole lot going on here, guys, but I pulled a section because I thought it was quite interesting. So, okay, this is from Brandon Braga. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. As he was talking about the writing process. We were running out of time, we couldn't get the story approved, and this was to be expected since there was a great deal of scrutiny on everyone's part, and rightfully so. But things were heating up with the movie. We had to re-break the finale 3 times. We had to rewrite the whole script twice. Ron's dog got sick. He had a computer failure and lost an act. There was a 2-week period there where we wrote like 300 pages. By the time it was over, I got some sort of carpal tunnel syndrome between my thumb and my wrist from hitting the space bar. I'm throwing that out there because they went through so much hell trying to write this finale, and they did a bang-up job. And like I had mentioned earlier, when it comes to this versus Generations, I think that this definitely was a great ending for the TNG crew. Not really sure Generations was. It definitely was a good ending for Kirk, that's for sure. But they went through so much trying to get this right. I mean, and everything that he said was going wrong was going wrong. It was almost like the universe was against them, right? But they were able to pull it out, and they did a wonderful, wonderful job. The one other thing that I did want to bring up was other great series finales. So I, of course, brought up a couple here. MASH, okay, you know, end of the war and they're leaving and stuff like that. I know people talk about that. Bob Newhart. He had 2 shows, Bob Newhart Show and Newhart. The second one, I love that everything was a dream and was an ending to Bob Newhart. Like, that was just brilliant. So that's why I put it in there. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I feel like ended pretty well. I mean, yes, we lost Spike and I think we lost Anya, but I think how she was no longer alone, which is what she felt like the whole freaking time, was brilliant on how they put that together. And now apparently we're going to have a new Buffy, so we'll see what happens. But of course, I also wanted to mention Bones. Now, Bones was 12 seasons. I talk about Bones all the time. If you guys have not seen the show, you really should. I think it's brilliant writing, brilliant acting. It keeps you engaged. You could watch it over and over again. And then also the way that they ended the series was absolutely brilliant. So I wanted to mention that. And of course, Dave, one of my Patreon members, he had mentioned that he thinks that Star Trek Picard and DS9 both had memorable and lovely series finales that I could watch over and over again. Sean says, was there talk of canceling Star Trek TNG after the first couple seasons back in the day? I think they thought that it would have gotten canceled, but I know that they were approved for the first 2 seasons. Like, that was their contract. And if they didn't have that, they probably would have gotten canceled just because it didn't go very well. Ed says, I watched MASH, Newhart, and Buffy finales live, and they were all amazing. I've never seen Bones, but my son was a big fan. I love Bones. You would love it, Ed. I really think you would. And again, I just talked about Xena because it was his 30th anniversary. That is not a finale that I liked. I understand it. It still breaks my heart. Only seen it once. I won't watch it again. Sean says, MASH, I saw the ending when I was 15 live on TV. Oh, that is so cool. I'm sure everyone there was no dry eye in the house, right? Michael says, The Wire had a good series finale. The Americans had a good series finale as well. And then Sean says, House had a good ending too. All right. Look at all these really awesome finales. I think I saw that what was the prequel to the Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul? I heard that had a good finale. I should ask my husband. He's a huge fan. I never got into it, but he did love the show. So those are the amazing series finales from different shows. And now I guess I will jump in to Penny for your thoughts.
thoughts.
All right, I got 4, and I'm super stoked about this. And the first one is a clip from Ed, who is in the audience.
Hey, this is Ed Pogue. You can call me My Figure Universe, and I have a couple of thoughts about All Good Things. All Good Things is definitely one of the best Star Trek finales that you could ever possibly ask for. Is it my favorite? No, it's not my favorite, but I'm a DS9 guy. But we'll get back to that another time. But I will say this. If I could choose one thing to take out of this finale, it would be Riker being jealous over the Worf and Troy relationship. We could get rid of the Troy and Worf relationship altogether, but the jealousy is just, I don't like jealousy. We don't need the jealousy. Anyways, that's my penny. There it is. I hope you enjoy.
I'm glad Ed mentioned that because, like I was saying, like it affected Riker in the future, right? Because he didn't look happy that Worf and Troy got together, which I thought was kind of weird because he's been with I don't know how many people, so it's like, okay. But because Troy died, it was like he blamed Worf for it. And I don't know, it just seemed off with his character. I just didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. And so it was just interesting that that was the route that they went. But because they were trying to make it so different and they had to pull back, maybe that's why they did that. Ed says, I like this guy. Michael says, my sister is always watching Bones. It's like a comfort show for her. I've never seen it. Same. I'm going to confess right now, I saw Bones when I was pregnant with my daughter. It has played every day in my household since the day she was born. 17 years. It's constantly just looping in the background. She goes to sleep with it at night. That's how much we watch Bones. So anytime I see a Star Trek actor, like I talked to John Billingsley, Stephanie Chakowski, all of them, I'm like, let's talk some Bones. You know, I even talked to Michelle Hurd at STLV about being on Bones, and she was like, it was an amazing time. And I was like, I hear they're amazing. She's like, they so are. So I love connecting those two dots. Now, to continue the penny, Abby from First Light Podcast, she said this over at Blue Sky. She says, it's by far my favorite series finale. It shows how this crew, this family, can solve problems through time. Though all the TNG cast look way better than their old age makeup in that episode. Preach, Abby, preach. But I love she mentioned about this crew and them being a family because that's, I think, what Q was trying to showcase to Picard. Don't lose sight to your crew because, you know, Picard was always like concerned. What happened to my crew? What, you know, hang on to each other, but then they fell apart. And then at the end, he's like, don't be alone. Like Q was really trying to showcase like, this is what you need. Don't lose sight of it. Sub Commander Tall, who was also in the chat. I don't know if they're still here, but loved it. In my opinion, TNG should have ended there or at least taken an extended break before jumping into feature films, all of which were a disappointment to me. I agree. I think this was a proper ending. Not Genesis, love First Contact, but not First Contact, not Insurrection, definitely not Nemesis. And I think maybe if they did have a break, maybe they rushed it. Maybe because they were so trying to get TNG finale good that the movies just fell flat. I mean, I can't explain about the other three besides First Contact. That was good. But for Genesis, maybe that's why it fell flat because they rushed it, maybe. Or maybe they put too much focus onto it. I'm not sure what happened, but it just didn't feel right to me. The only thing that I loved is that they crashed the Enterprise D. And I liked that because I felt like that was the end of that chapter. They probably should have done it here in TNG, but I'm glad they at least did it and it was in the movies. And of course, Carol here on YouTube said it needed another 5-year mission, meaning she did not want TNG to end. And I think they were expecting maybe 8 years for TNG, so they were kind of surprised they only got 7. However, that was more than TOS. And right now it's the highest, the longest, you know, when it comes to all the shows, because now we're only getting 5. So like TNG, DS9, and Voyager all got 7 seasons, and I'm glad we were able to get that. So those are the penny for your thoughts. Thank you guys so much. Ed, Abby, Sub-Commander Tall and Carol for commenting and submitting a clip. And of course, now I will get to jump into tricorder rating.
My tricorder.
All right, guys, I got 5 votes over at Patreon. Woo! And I asked of what they thought about All Good Things. And 60% said it's the best series finale ever. 40% said it is in the top 5. And 0% for I love it, but not perfect. And I don't care for this finale. So very, very high comments and high ranking scores there. Thank you for anyone who had voted. Ed does say, I totally recommend reading Mike McMahon's book, Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 8. It's called Warped. Are you talking about this book? I feel like I just have a bunch of tricks just coming out of my little hat here. Yes, this is fantastic. This is why Lower Decks is amazing. Okay, so I'm just throwing that out there. This is his gift to us, okay? Kimberly Ann also says 10 out of 10. Absolutely. And Sean says there are more episodes of TNG than all of modern Trek series combined. Trek needs to come back to the terrestrial television. We just ended season 3 of Strange New Worlds. And to think that we've only done 30 episodes and it's almost done. It's just weird. I don't know what's going on with streaming and all that stuff. I wish we had more because I just don't think that it's really showcasing the characters like we hope. They're doing their best. We've had amazing moments. Don't get me started about Terrarium with Ortegas. But it's, you know, we've always had those filler episodes and then we've had bottle episodes and we've had this. And I don't know, it just feels rushed. I think that's the problem. It just feels rushed. So yeah, it's definitely a problem. All right, guys, let me see where I'm at here on my notes. Oh, it's now time to find out what my next episode's going to be. So here's the Sick Bay Spitter. Finally happening. I am doing the Crusher family tribute. I get to talk about Beverly Crusher and her boys and her late husband, Jack R. Crusher. Super excited. And if you want to be a guest for this episode, please hit me up at crusherconvo@gmail.com. And yeah, we will gush about the Crushers. So can't wait about that. That's going to be on October 3rd, and I will be live. So please meet me here in the chat. And yeah, guys, let me see the comments real fast. Sean says these stories and characters are not getting the chance to live. So true. So true. Ed says there is definitely more episodes of the current Trek than there was TNG. So yeah, definitely. There's some math happening that it's my Friday. I can't math right now. But anyways, guys, let's go ahead into my redhead alert. It is giveaway time over at Crusher Convo. Once I get to 1,000 followers on Instagram and 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I will be giving away an autograph of Gates McFadden to a very special listener. So please spread the word and share my content to help me reach my goal. And I would love to be doing lives again on Instagram. So please help me reach 1,000 followers. And just like Ed, you can send a penny for your thoughts. So don't forget to submit one by recording off of crusherconvo.com, like Ed has, a 60 to 90 second clip, or you can email me your thoughts to crusherconvo@gmail.com, and I will announce your penny live on the air. You may also drop a comment on my socials, which is usually on Threads or Blue Sky, just like Abby and Subcommander Tall did, or even Carol did here on YouTube, and I will mention it here. But yes, please send me a penny, join the conversation, and we'll crush it together. And my Patreon shout-outs go to Leslie and Dave, who are my Commander patrons. and Chuck and Engineer Mark, who are my Admiral patrons. If you would like to support the podcast and enjoy exclusive extra content, like I mentioned last time, sobbed like a total baby when I watched Terrarium, just head over to patreon.com/Crusher Combo, and you can sign up for as low as $3 a month. All right, guys, thank you so much. In the chat, there's some math going on. Ed's like, I math all the time. Sean's like, live actions 125. Ed's like and follow. There's stuff going on here, so gotta love it. Gotta love interaction in the chat. But thank you guys so much. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. Again, I will be live here in 2 weeks to talk about the Crusher family. Hoping to get interviews set up. I got a couple people in mind, but yeah, super stoked. Thanks so much. Live long and prosper.
And the sky's the limit.